Hi, my name is Chelsea, and I want to talk about what my experience was like being raised as a Jehovah's Witness and also what it was like to leave, as well as a couple things that I'm surprisingly grateful for having learned growing up that way. So, just to start it off, I will say my parents um, they got pregnant with me before they were married. My dad was a third generation Jehovah's Witness, while my mom was raised Catholic. She um, was not at all aware of the religion prior to them getting together, but she joined and became a baptized Jehovah's Witness before I was born. And I don't think she fully understood what it was all about. I think she was more just like, she really liked my dad, and it just seemed like, oh, a religion, just like what this is probably just like Presbyterian or something. Like she didn't really fully get what a like lifestyle and commitment and cult it was. It was a bizarre childhood in that it was a combination of both incredibly strict and also super lenient. My parents could not be more different. My dad was so strict, so spiritual. He worked all the time. We did have fun moments together, but really it was more about like he was kind of hard on me when I was a kid and just like, you've got to be better, you've got to do more. And my mom was like, no rules. Like I was more of the parent for her. She was bipolar and an alcoholic and um, pretty chaotic at times. She's also a Sagittarius, which is like really blunt, like does not think before they speak, is like more into having fun and just doing things like off the cuff. and, so, um, interestingly, like, whereas like with my dad, like when we would go to meetings, a lot of kids were allowed to draw or color during the meetings, which we went to 3 meetings a week. Um, Thursday and Sunday were both 2 hours long, and Monday or Tuesday that was like 1 hour long. And then that wasn't even counting going out in service, but like most kids could kind of mess around during meetings. My dad was like, you're not allowed to draw. You're not allowed to do anything. You need to be listening to what they're talking about on the podium, which was usually like a lot of stuff about Armageddon and about how like if you're not following all of the rules of this religion, then you're not going to make it into the new system. They're all going to be washed away. And then it's just going to be Jehovah's Witnesses left on this new paradise earth. And so, like, I really had to sit there and fully listen to it with no distractions, like no writing, no drawing, no nothing. And all the while, like my mom knowing internally, like that my mom was really bad. Like my mom was not following the rules at all. In fact, like she was giving me secret Christmases and secret birthday parties and like all of that, like while my dad would be at work. And I think she did it because she was like, what's the harm? She didn't fully 100% believe what this religion was. Like, or if she did, it was like really compartmentalized. Like if someone were to ask her details about it, she'd be like, yeah, this is what I believe in. And yet there was still some part of her that was like, yeah, but I don't believe in it enough to not give my daughter like holidays and birthdays and all of that. But they still weren't normal holidays or birthdays because I could never talk about them to anyone else. And even when I got those gifts, I had to then like, I would like get them in the garage. Like the presents would be hidden in the garage. And then I would have to wait like a month or two after Christmas or my birthday or whatever it was to even bring the toy into the house, so that it was a long enough time after so that there wouldn't be any like, wait, where did she get that new thing, you know? And so it was like, it was torturous. It was torturous, not only because it was like, okay, here's this toy, and then no, you don't actually get to have it for like another month or two, which for a child is like eternity. It's just like, or you have to go to the garage to play with your toy or something. But it was also torture because internally I believed everything that they were saying about Armageddon and that it was going to destroy everyone who wasn't following all of the rules. And I knew 100% that my mom wasn't following the rules. She, you know, she was erratic and she had legal issues. She got into a lot of trouble. She would disappear sometimes. And one time she even disappeared with me and flew across the country with me, did not tell my dad, didn't tell anyone. She would just do that sometimes. And just disappear, and my dad wouldn't know where I was or if I was okay or even if I was even alive or, you know, any of that. And there was just so much chaos and so much like feeling like I was responsible for my mom and knowing that like she wasn't going to survive Armageddon. And this weight on my shoulders, like not only was I her parent, but it was like on me to try to get her into the new paradise earth, you know, which is like an insane burden for like a very young child to face. And also just like all of the existential feelings of like death and like your soul being destroyed, all of that. And it was really heavy for a little kid. And that is part of, I think, in addition to many of the other little, you know, not little, but traumatic things that I faced when I was a kid, that all kind of combined to just form like this amalgam of massive trauma and like depression and PTSD. On top of that, one of the things people always ask me about is molestation and child abuse. While I was not sexually abused, there were plenty of kids around me that were. I did witness some abuse, and it feels really weird to talk about now. So, might just hold off on that for now. But I did witness abuse, and there was outright like rape allegations. There was an elder in my congregation when I was a kid who had been accused of raping several young boys. And they had all come to the elders independently. It was one of those things where he absolutely did it, you know, but they were all discouraged from going forward to like the police and reporting him. And so he never faced any legal consequences of raping like maybe 4 or 5 little boys. And I knew about that when I would hear about it even when I was a kid, and I would hear about a lot of other kids getting abused. And it's weird, you know, like even as I was a kid, it was just like, is that going to happen to me? I just remember thinking like that, like always kind of having to be on guard. I had so many other issues, but there was always like, am I going to have to like protect myself? Like, is there a threat coming? Like, everybody's so nice, and these are all like, everyone in this community is like my family, and yet can I really trust any of them? Because like, I don't know. And so it's heavy. There was just so much heaviness at home, in the congregation, within the religion, like within the family. There was so much. So then when I was around 11 or 12 years old, my parents separated. Now, within the religion, you're not allowed to get a divorce, which is wild. So my parents could separate and they could live separately, but they were not allowed to see other people. And that was it. That was just like that. They were expected to do that for the rest of their lives. And when that happened, it was really devastating. I remember my dad moved out, and I was so upset, just like breathing so hard and like just like hallucinatory with grief, that I threw my dad's keys out into the busy street in front of our house. And it felt like it was the end of the world. This was like around the late 90s. And during that time, I mean, divorces were on the rise, but definitely not within the community that I was in. You know, it was rare for even the kids that I went to school with to have divorced parents, but within the religion, it was unheard. Like, I did not know anyone whose parents had separated. So I felt just like outcast. I was also like morbidly obese. I mean, even trying to think weight wise, it was just like, don't know where I was at, but I was, by the time I was like 11 or 12, I was definitely over 200 pounds. And which for my height and everything was just like, it was not okay. And all I did was eat. I was suicidally depressed. I'd been in therapy, but it wasn't really doing anything. And this was around the same time that I started to go on an antidepressant for the first time. And it was because they said there was nothing left to do. It was safer for me to do that than to not do anything. So, so yeah, that was kind of like my rock bottom at like 11 or 12. And then when I was 16 years old, my dad got disfellowshipped. He had started a relationship with someone, which, surprise, like after, I don't know, 5 years of just being fully single, like he started to have interest in someone. And so, yeah, he, he got found out and he got disfellowshipped, which means like fully shunned by everyone in the congregation, all of his friends, his entire community, everyone that he knew, essentially not allowed to speak to him, even his family. And he was pretty cool with it. Like he still went to every meeting with me, and we would go to meetings like 3 times a week, and he would sit there silently in the back, and then he would, when it was over, he would immediately go out into his car and like let me have my time to like socialize with people, since that's what you would do after a meeting. And he would wait for me, and then I would come out and we would leave. I could still talk to him, but I mean, I don't remember what the rules were on that. Like maybe I was supposed to keep it limited, but I didn't. Like nothing changed in our relationship. Um, in fact, during that time, I was a regular pioneer, which means that I was getting like 50 hours of door-to-door preaching in every month. So I was considered like very spiritual. I was doing like really well. And meanwhile, I had this like disfellowship dad. Then at 17, I was staying at my dad's apartment on the weekend. At this point, he was still disfellowshipped. And he was in the shower, and I was on his computer, which wasn't that weird at that time. Like we didn't have personal computers. It was just kind of like we shared one. And I found this letter in which he had started to write about realizing that the Jehovah's Witness religion was not the truth, which is what they claim to be. They claim to be the only truth, that there is no other truth. And so I started to read that, and it blew my brain open. I became so disoriented. I started hyperventilating. Like I had to leave right then while my dad was still in the shower. I didn't tell him I was leaving. I left the note up on the computer so that he would probably like figure out what had happened. And then I just drove back to my mom's. Meanwhile, like my mom wasn't going to meetings. My mom was like pretty much just done. She technically like still told people, yeah, I'm a Jehovah's Witness, but like she wasn't going to meetings. She wasn't doing anything. But they didn't really care that she wasn't going, because like I think my mom was a lot of trouble. And so when she left, they were like, it's fine. You don't need to come back. Whereas with my dad had been an elder, so it was a big hit when he left. But it was especially a big hit for me. Like my dad had been like the most spiritual person I'd ever known. And he was also like the smartest person that I'd ever known. And for him to be saying like, I don't believe that this is the truth, I don't want to stay in this religion, it blew my brain wide open. Like I'd never fully considered what that meant. And again, this is like the difference between a regular religion and like the Jehovah's Witnesses is like, I've known kids who like grew up Catholic and they just didn't care. Like if someone told them like Jesus never existed, they'd be like, okay, cool. Like they don't care, whereas like the Witnesses, it's like, no, you are like pledging everything on this. Like it is your everything. You must constantly be reaffirming that you believe in this and that this is the truth and this is the only truth and that you would do anything to defend it and that you would put your life on the line to defend this. And so when I saw that, I remember it was like I drove home, I got to my mom's house, and I immediately, just without a word, walked into the bathroom, locked the door, and fell to the ground and started hyperventilating. I say that this was like my first psychedelic experience. And it's interesting because I do breath work, and that's specifically altered state breath work, where you're breathing in such a way that you're actually inducing an altered state, which is very similar to a psychedelic experience. And I was unknowingly doing that. Like I was hyperventilating so hard that I was hallucinating, and I was off like on another planet. I was just going, if this isn't the truth, then what is the truth? And what does this mean for me? And what is, I am alone. I am alone. My mom is not in this anymore. My dad is not in this anymore. I am fully alone in the universe. I am unsafe. I am like, I don't know what's what. And I was in there for hours. I was in there just like losing my mind for hours. And my dad called and I wouldn't pick up because I was afraid to even talk to him, because you're taught to not trust anyone who speaks against the religion. And especially if it was someone who was in high standing, like an elder, like that's even more reason, because you're also taught to believe that if anyone changes their mind on what they believe, it means that they were hijacked, like by a demon, by Satan specifically. That he came and he entered their body and he took them over. And now you can no longer trust them because they're not who you thought they were. They've been completely hijacked by something else, evil. And that was what it felt like. It felt like I no longer had a dad. It felt like my dad had died. And it was, I didn't know how to talk to him or when I was going to talk to him. Eventually I did let myself talk to him, and he was like, I want to be really cautious about what I say to you, but the first thing I want you to know is I am never going to ask you to like change your beliefs. Like if you, he's like, I don't know what I'm going to do yet, but whatever you want to do, I will support you in anything. Whether you want to stay in the religion, whether you want to leave, like I will fully support you no matter what. And that was the first time in my life that I ever felt like extremely unconditionally loved by my dad. I felt like when I was younger, my dad was so strict with me about studying. It was always like, did you study your watchtower? Did you study for Bible study? Did you do this? He was always really on me. And it felt like his love was so conditional on how spiritual I was, that to hear him for the very first time just being like, I will love you no matter what you want to do. I was like, I have a totally different dad, and I don't know if I trust it, but I also really like this. Like this feels good to me to have a parent like that. And so that was like the start. And he was like, I don't want to talk to you about like my reasoning. I just want you to know, like, I'm still going to get reinstated. I'm still going to go to meetings. Nothing's going to change. And I don't want you to be afraid, you know, we'll figure out what we're going to do. And so I did that for a while. It was just like, but for a while I was like, nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. Like still going to meetings, still acting super normal. But internally it had started to like chip, like tiniest little chips away at me, where I had started to consider, well, what if it isn't the truth? What if it's not? Like, what would you do? You would survive, right? Yeah, you would survive. And like, well, what are the kinds of things that you would do, you know, if you weren't in the religion, that you couldn't do while you were in the religion? Like, what would you become? Like, what would you do, go to college for? What kind of career would you have? Like, what kind of things would you want for your future? And so like, those were all like little thoughts that started to peek in that I never allowed in before. Meanwhile, at this time, like I was in my senior year of high school. I didn't really have a lot of friends that were that were witnesses. I had some friends from school. I wasn't in a great place. I would say overall, like something that had happened to me was I was just a liar. Like I had such a complicated life, complicated home life, like with my mom. There were things that my mom had done that I could never tell anyone. And that's, you know, I couldn't tell my dad. I couldn't tell anyone at the Kingdom Hall. I couldn't tell anyone at school, you know, and it made me start to compartmentalize my life and also create a separate reality. Like okay, I'm going to tell these people this thing and these people this thing, because it was like I was creating my own reality. I didn't want anyone to know how terrible my home life had been and like how traumatic some of the stuff was that I had gone through. And so I was like, I'm going to create this other life where I've never been through anything terrible. I've like nothing bad has ever happened to me. I'm just super normal and I'm totally fine. And so like all of the friendships that I had were really like, there was like so much lying. And it's something I look back at now. It's like one of the biggest lessons I've learned is that it does not matter how terrible your life is, how sad or how pitiful it is. Lying about it is always going to make you look delusional. Whenever you lie about anything, you just look crazy. Whereas if you are honest about like your terrible, pitiful life, people will have empathy for you, you know? I didn't ever think about that. I never thought about like, oh, if I was actually honest about what my life was like, people would feel like, whoa, you've been through a lot. Like you're so strong. I wanted to just create this illusion where my life was just so easy, fancy free, where like, nope, nothing bad's ever happened to me. I'm totally fine, like totally normal. And that made me look delusional. And then I would get caught in lies where it was like, no, none of that was real, you know? So I definitely have a thing about like lying now where I'm like, never again, like never lie about anything. But so yeah, at this time, I had made all of these friends on this message board that was like for Jehovah's Witness youths. And a lot of them were in the Southwest of the United States. And these were like the friends that I'd always wished that I had. There was something about Michigan, like where I grew up, like whether it was at school or at the Kingdom Hall, like I just could not find people that felt like my people. I don't know what that was. Like it just felt like there was a disconnect between our interests. Like anything that we would have to talk about, I just felt like I had people that were my friends, but I never felt like I could connect with them on the things that interested me. You know, we were so completely different people. And these people that were on this message board, I was like, oh no, these are my people and they're witnesses. This is like what I've always wanted since my like youngest memory is I just wanted like really good witness friends. So when my dad had started to talk about like, what do you want to do after you graduate high school? Like, what's your dream? What would you love to do? And he was also talking about like the idea of potentially moving somewhere outside of Michigan because he wanted to leave the religion, but he wanted to do so in a way where he could just kind of slip away, where it wasn't some big like I'm leaving and I'm not coming back, where it's like he could still occasionally talk on the phone with his family or his friends, you know, without really like devastating them and just being like, it's all over, I'm leaving this thing, you know. So that's a common like tactic that that people who leave cults, you know, will occasionally do, although it's probably a lot harder now with social media than it was at the time. But so he was like, yeah, I'm thinking about like wanting to move somewhere, but where would you want to go to college? Where would you want to go? And immediately I was like, Southern California, because I knew about all of these witness kids who were there. And I was like, this is my chance to have all of my friends. And at this point, I really hadn't considered like leaving the religion completely. I was just sort of on the fence, but still mainly like I'm going to stay in it. And so we moved to Southern California when I graduated high school. And it was amazing. Like it was the greatest experience of my life. California was like everything to me. Like I never felt any connection to Michigan. I don't know, like the people there, like the everything, there was nothing there. To this day, like I haven't been back since January 2006. So, I mean, it's been like 14, 15 years. And like, there was nothing there that I felt connected to. And when I moved to California, it was just immediately like, this is my place. These are my people. Like everywhere I went, I got a job as a barista and I became friends with everyone that I worked with. and I had all of these witness friends, and they were awesome. And I had one great like girlfriend in particular who was like my dream best friend, you know, like we could talk for hours about, like, we had all so many similar interests, and we would laugh and we would just cry laughing, and it was like the greatest connection in my life. And I was so like, this, I've been waiting my whole life for this, and now I finally have it. So I was going to meetings in California by myself. My dad wasn't. And then slowly it started to kind of like chip away more. Like my mind had started to open up to the idea that, like, what if this isn't the truth? Like, what if there's something else beyond this? Um, and while I would be at meetings, I would start to hear little things that would make me go, I don't know if this is right. Like, this doesn't feel right to me. And I just started to let myself question it more. And the more that I did, it was like this crack that just started to grow and grow and grow. And so I started like slowly going to less and less meetings. And it was like occasionally just like every Sunday. And then it was like every other Sunday. And then, but I was still hanging out with my witness friends. But like the thing that's really different about witnesses and normal people in religion is like, they're serious, like they're in it, they're in the religion like on the daily. And like they would sit around and talk about, like, what did you all think about the Watchtower study this past Sunday? Like, what did you think about paragraph 16? And like 1 Corinthians 13:25 says da 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 da. Like they were so deeply in it that, like, me not really going to meetings, I was starting to get into situations in which I felt like they were going to catch me and realize I wasn't really going to meetings, and kind of kept my head down and kind of like didn't really talk about a lot. But I could feel it, like the pressure was coming, and I was going, I'm not going to be able to do this for very much longer. And so what ended up happening, that did happen, where I just decided, you know what, I think I'm going to make a break for it. And I'd made some friends at my job at the coffee shop. So like I had kind of felt like okay about just like leaving. I was like, you know what, I will find other friends. And in California, it's like everybody's my friend. Like everybody's so cool here. It's so completely different from Michigan. Like friends grow on trees here, you know? So it was really sad to leave like my good friend though, but Leslie, like that was devastating to me. I remember, so I had decided January 1st, 2006 was going to be the cutoff date. I was going back to Michigan for like a quick little trip back. And I was like, when I come back, I'm not going to pick up the phone. I'm not going to respond to texts or anything after that. I'm going to make a break for it. And I remember she had called me a few times and I didn't pick up. And then she left a voicemail and I couldn't listen to it for like almost a year. Like that was how avoidant I was of the situation. Like I couldn't handle it. Couldn't handle hearing her voice. I really cared about her as a friend. And just, I knew that when you leave, they think that you have been hijacked by a demonic force. And they think that you loved the world so much that you just had to watch rated R movies and have sex and do drugs and all of that. And that was the thing that drove you away. But that's not the truth. Like that, they're taught that anyone who leaves, it's because they love the world too much. And for me, it was like, I don't love the world. It's that I realized this isn't the truth. And I had, slowly been opening up and asking my dad more questions, like very slowly over time, like, okay, why isn't this real? Why, and I'd start to see it for myself too, just going to meetings by myself and kind of being really critical for the first time, just being like, this isn't right. And I don't want to do this, So I left, and around that same time, my grandma, my dad's mom, had started to get really suspicious. I think she had like a sense of intuition that like we had made a run for it and we weren't going to meetings. And so she had contacted elders from our local congregation. They weren't the same elders from the congregation that I had been going to occasionally. And one day when I was walking out to my car to go to work, two men in suits started swiftly walking up to me. I wouldn't say they were running, but they were coming at me with speed. And they were saying, Chelsea, your grandmother wants you to come with us. Your grandmother wants you to make it into the new paradise earth. She's worried about you. You need to come with us right now. And we lived in a gated apartment complex. And so I was like, how did you guys get in here? Like, and also, why are two full grown men in suits running after me? Like, it was one of those moments that definitely led to some PTSD down the road of like men chasing after me. You know, it just like never feels good when you're a young, like 17, 18-year-old girl. So yeah, around that felt like it sealed the deal. I was like, oh, this is a cult. Like, I never knew that was a thing that might happen, that like men might chase after you and go, come with us. Like, what would they have done with me? Like, what possibly would they have done? Like, kidnapped me? Like, I have no idea. It's the kind of thing where like growing up where you're following all of the rules, like, of course something like that's ever going to happen to you. But once you break the rules, like, I don't know what happened to the other people who broke the rules. So I have no idea what they would have done. But after that, I started to carry pepper spray and like became really scared of just being followed in general. Like I worried that they knew where I worked and that, you know, they would be coming after me. My dad ended up contacting my grandma and explaining to her, like, we're done and do not send anyone else. We will call the police. So that kind of ended that. Yeah, it was tough because like after that, basically you get demonized by everybody in your community. And like these people, like I was never super close with like my extended family on either side. And so like the people that I had grown up with in like my congregation, those really had become like my aunts and uncles. You know, those were my family. And to know that now they believe that I just loved the world too much, you know, that I had just gotten weak and let a demon inside of me, you know, and take me over. Like that, it sucks because it's like you still want them to know, no, I'm still in here. I just found out some stuff. Like you don't want them to think that you want to be in control of what they think about you, and you can't, you know. And that was really tough on me. But it's one of those things like that you have to let go. And yeah, so that's most of that. Now I try to just make it like a practice of being like grateful for even the really tough stuff that happens to me. And this is still one that like I try to do that with. And one of the things that I'm most grateful for about the way that I grew up as a witness was the incredible amount of diversity that I experienced in my entire community. I would say I was in a couple different congregations growing up, and all of them were at least 50% Black. And then there were always like a lot of Hispanic people and Asian people, like or Middle Eastern people. There were like people from all backgrounds. I never grew up thinking I am the majority, like white people are the majority. I never thought that. Like I genuinely remember as a little kid thinking that the world was like equal parts, like that it was a pie and we were all equal parts, like, and that white was just as big as every other part. And like, of course, this is my own experience, and I would not be surprised if it was not this way in other parts of the country or even in different congregations. I'm just saying that I never experienced this. In every congregation that I was in, there was genuine love and inclusion among every different group of people. Like, it was not a situation where like the white people just hung out by themselves, like, and did their own things, had their own parties. It was like everyone was invited. And I felt like that really true, genuine love there. Like later on, as I got older and I started to realize, oh, like people are really racist. Like they're actually racist. like I remember being young and thinking like when people said racist things, I was like, those are jokes. They definitely don't actually mean it. And then I got older and I was like, oh no, people mean that stuff. And I'm so grateful that so much inclusion was like baked into me when I was such a young kid. Because I just feel like it's made a difference in like how I see the world and just how I am as an adult. But one of the other things I'm really, and I'm kind of torn on whether I'm grateful. I mean, I guess I am grateful for it because I'm mentioning it, but I, when I left this religion, I really started to see that it was a cult, and I was firsthand like shunned, because I didn't want, that I didn't believe in it anymore. And I would tell people that, and they would act so shocked, like, wow, I can't believe your family shuns you just because you don't believe in this religion anymore. And yet, like, one of the things that this has helped me to see is that cult-like mentality exists everywhere. I would say one of the most prominent places that I see it existing is within politics. People on both sides are so intense about their beliefs. And if you veer from what that narrative is, you are a threat. Even if you believe in 90% of what they believe in, and it's that 10% that is a threat to their existence, and it is like not okay. And that's not something that it's always been like. I just feel like it's definitely happened more recently. But I mean, it's also apparent in things like your diet, like with veganism. Like I was a vegetarian for 9 years, and I remember feeling like I was superior, and also like everyone who ate meat was, wrong and evil, like to an extent, like they were all just so misinformed. They had no idea what they were doing, and they had no reason to be eating meat. And like I needed to show them what the way was. Well, meanwhile, like over those 9 years of not eating meat, I was getting sicker and sicker. My health was deteriorating, and my hormones were all over the place. It was a situation in which like I truly had to be on like death's door to realize, like, okay, I've got to make a change. Like I can't do this anymore. I'm hurting myself. And even then it was like so difficult to change. But like the big realization there was, while a vegetarian diet may be great for so many people, you cannot say that there is no reason for anyone to ever eat meat, because I do believe that biologically there are people who need meat to be healthy. And it's not the same thing with like the amino acids of like rice and beans and tofu and plant protein and pea protein. It's not the same thing. I know that because I tried to do that. I tried literally every way to make a vegetarian diet work. And I cried hysterically when I first started to eat meat. I cried and I cried, and I didn't stop crying for months. And yet I started to feel better, and I started to realize that my body is one that needs meat, or at least animal protein, to be somewhat healthy. Is that something that might change? Absolutely. I am open to anything changing at any time. I have found that growing up this way and going through everything that I have, the thing that I am grateful for is that I do not hold on to my beliefs as though they are sacred forever and unchangeable. I believe in what I believe in right now, and I am 100% open to any of my beliefs changing at any time, given the right information, the right experience, whatever it is. If you can prove it to me, I will change my beliefs. And I feel like that is the best place to be in, because when you start to go to a place where you go, this is what I believe in, and it's the only way to believe in this, And anyone who doesn't believe in what I believe in is evil, and I don't want to talk to them. Like people right now politically cutting off their family members and talking about it with pride. Like I've had to cut off like half of my whole family because they voted for Trump. Oh my God, to talk about that with pride, it's devastating to me because it reminds me of the witnesses who would talk about, you know what, I had to stop talking to my son and his children, you know, and now I don't have grandchildren, like, and all of that, like with pride, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. And I think where it comes from is its ideological weakness. If you feel like anyone else's beliefs are a threat to you, like your beliefs are so weak that you might be swayed by anyone else, that you can't even hold space for anyone else's differences, you know, that you have to cut them off and that's your only option. I don't agree with it. I don't agree with it. There are plenty of things that people might think out there that I don't agree with. And I might really not agree with them, but I will hold space for them to believe in that without demonizing them. I accept that we have all lived different lives and we're all on different paths. And just because they believe that right now doesn't mean they're going to believe that in a year or 5 years. It's just what they believe is based on the experiences they've had. And those experiences are not going to change because I refuse to talk to them. In fact, if anything, that is going to drive in them the need to hold on tighter to these beliefs. It's when you come at people with an open heart and accepting, and you go, even if you have done horrible things, even if you are a terrible person, I accept you. I hold space for who you are. I don't encourage you to you know, commit harm or any of that. Of course, that's a totally different issue. And of course, like, you know, people who have like physically hurt people, like these are different issues. But I'm just saying, when it comes to like ideological differences, I don't agree with this idea of shunning. I don't, because I've lived through that. And it's so funny to me, like that the same people who would hear about my experiences and go, that's so cruel, that's so evil, that your family wouldn't even talk to you. And yet on the other side of things, they're like, yeah, I don't talk to half of my family because they believe in this. They voted for so-and-so. It's the same thing. Wake up. It's the same thing. Okay. And I'm grateful that I can see that. I don't think a lot of people see it. I think their awareness is severely limited. They don't see it. And I think it's something that they're going to see as time goes by and as they face the consequences of those decisions. And it's going to hurt. It's going to be painful, especially when you have like lost time with family and time that could have been spent connecting over the things that you do agree with, where you're just fully accepting somebody. You know, that's where real change happens, when somebody comes at you with unconditional love. Like with my dad, you know, like with my dad, when he said, I will love you no matter what, whether you want to be in this religion, whether you don't want to be in it, I am here for you. And that was when I changed. That was the moment where everything started changing. That if he would have said, listen, you got to get out of this religion, you can't do it, it's evil, I would have lost my mind. I would have gone full tilt in the other way. I wouldn't have listened to a word that he said. If he would have said, if you stay in this religion, I'm never going to talk to you again, that would have been another thing that would have driven me deeper into the arms of the witnesses. And I wouldn't have ever wanted to listen to him again. It was when he said, I love you no matter what you decide, no matter what you believe in, I will be here. That everything, it's that the power of that love that breaks everything open. And I believe that's true across the board, even with this tough political stuff. And I say that, I know this stuff is tough. I know it feels impossible to embrace anyone who believes in some of these things. And yet I'm saying that's just because it's hard, just because it's difficult, doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. In fact, it's usually the most difficult thing that you need to do the most. So I'm grateful for that knowledge and that understanding. And yeah, so that's that. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please let me know with like a comment or I don't know, a thumbs up or anything. And you know, I'm gonna drop more videos soon on other stuff like ayahuasca and I don't know, just like I've got a list of a few different things. So subscribe if you're interested, and I would love if you watched. So anyway, see you next time.